What is up, world? It's your boy Ton, and you are listening to the Wonton Wealth Podcast. Here, I'm going to unravel anything and everything commercial real estate related. And more importantly, we're going to add abundant value. So if you're ready, buckle up your eardrums. All right, welcome back, people. This is Ton with Wonton Wealth. Today I have Joe Downs with us, an absolute badass. Joe, feel free to cuss here. It's super informal. We're super chill over here. Joe, why don't you give us a little synopsis, a little background story, your origin story of who you are, what you're doing now, and how all that relates to commercial real estate.
Will do. Tom, first of all, thank you for having me on. Love your show. We talked a little bit before about who you are and your show and your audience, and it's like I'm ready to riff with wherever you want this to go. You're my kind of people. My background and origin, I learned late in life. I was a serial entrepreneur. So I'm slow on the uptick, I guess, but hard at work, being an entrepreneur. How did I end up in storage I hope it's not too boring of a story, but I was a financial advisor, opportunity, but in keeping in with my statement, I was a financial advisor who also had a second job as a bartender. So I was bartended at night, and that's kind of important to the story because the bar I bartended at was a Villanova college bar. It ended up becoming one anyway, and they got shut down. I'll let you surmise as to why. But the owners approached me after they got shut down and said, "Look, we gotta sell it, and we need to sell it to somebody, and we want to reopen it, and we'll back you and whatever, but we got to open it as like a pub, a bar and restaurant." So I'm 30 years old, not loving what I'm doing as a financial advisor, and I'm a guy with testosterone who believes every guy should own a bar. Right? So here's like opportunity of a lifetime. 22 years ago, I'm 52 now, so 22 years ago looked like the opportunity of a lifetime. My God, thank God it didn't work out, because I would hate to be mired in the bar and restaurant business today. But I have utmost respect for those folks that are successful and open multiple locations, because that is one of the toughest businesses I've ever been in. Anyway, we reopened it, remodeled it, reopened it, bar and restaurant. Bar did great. The kitchen killed me. That's one of my life lessons. I talk to people all the time when they say, so I'm going to ruin it. If you're going to ask me at the end, I'm going to tell you now. What's one thing you can impart on people, or one lesson you've learned? It's my saying is you have to mind your kitchen, meaning you got to know what's going on in there, because if you don't, it'll kill you. Whatever your business, right? The operations behind the scene, you have to know it. You have to understand it. And I didn't. I knew how to run a bar. I didn't know how to run a kitchen. So anyway, failed completely in 11 months. Got my ass kicked, lost $100,000, had to start over. Took a job selling radio, talk radio in Philadelphia. Knew it was just temporary. But, eyes wide open, and, stayed positive, waiting for the next opportunity. Always wanted to be in real estate, and had my own mental block as to didn't know how to get into it. And I will say today it's a little easier thanks to guys like you who have these podcasts. We didn't have podcasts 22 years ago. We didn't even have webinars. If you wanted to learn something, you had to go show up in person. But and in fact, one of my clients came along, was called Real Estate Riches, and they taught people. They advertised on the radio to meet, come see their seminar, not webinar. I have to catch myself from saying webinar, seminar, at the local hotel or wherever they put it on. So I decided after I was able to scrape up a couple bucks, because I was completely broke after I lost everything. So it took me a little while, but I scraped up, $5,000, I think is what it cost, to learn how to buy, rehab, and flip houses or rent houses or whatever they were teaching. It was all residential. And so I started doing that. Actually, if I'm being honest, I probably started wholesaling because I was still broke. But wholesaled a bunch, got some cash, bought a few with a partner I met along the way, and, rentals, and did that game for a little bit. And then another client came along. And by the way, so now I have 3 jobs. So I'm selling radio, still bartending at another bar, one night a week. And now on the weekends, I'm out Saturday and Sunday morning walking through houses in West Philadelphia that smell like cat piss and are falling down, right? Because that's the smell of money, I was told, right? So So another client comes along, radio client, developer. I didn't end up doing anything with them, but the contact who they were developing high end luxury condos just outside the city with access to the city, right? So the point person, the broker on that job, was this guy Jamie Santoro, who's still my broker today. I have a real estate license, and I still hang my license with him. But I became friendly with them. They were an advertising client. I became friendly with, and he was like, "You got to go talk to my buddy Gary. He's got a company. He needs someone like you." And that company was DeSanto Realty Group, and he was buying multifamily and office properties, and they were selling the interest in them as tenant in commons for 1031 exchanges. But it was all done through alternative investment broker dealers. I know there's a lot going on there, but it was done as securities essentially. So he needed a sales guy with a securities license. Well, he checked 2 boxes right there with me. What I didn't have any background in was commercial real estate. So they taught me that. So I learned, and really I was a sales guy. I wasn't buying and underwriting the deal. I just knew enough, I learned how to knew enough to be dangerous, I guess, right? To raise the capital. So I did that for a couple of years and then had to reinvent again during the financial crisis, 2007, started in 07. Everybody knows it as 08 and 09. So the writing was on the wall again. Now I'm like, all right, what am I going to do now? I meet a guy at a tax lien seminar in Philadelphia because I'm in real estate and I love it. I'm out of radio at this point. But I love real estate. I'm flipping houses on the side because I got that in my, that arrow in my quiver. And, but I got to reinvent again. Thank God. And I'm married now. My wife has a great job. So she carried us for 2 years while I'm got to build the next venture, which turned out to be not tax liens. My ultimate partner in that business, Tom, introduced me to a performing second mortgage that he bought, yielding 25% to him. I was like, 25%? I just raised $93 million at 6.5%, 7% for 1031 exchange folks. There's a ton of margin in 25%. So I went to that seminar in person again and learned a lot through that. And I was like, wait a second. If they sold him a 25 yield, what was their yield on this thing? It had to be 50 at least, right? So, excuse me, I came back and said, Tom, we can make a business out of this. We gotta learn it. And so over the next couple of years, we built a business there, and we're doing really well. We had a staff of like 8 people, and then the CFPB is created. And the CFPB basically tells the banks, you can sell debt, but it's going to be ugly if anything goes wrong. So the banks were like, yeah, we're not going to sell anymore. So all of a sudden we're at a bit, we went from a business to a glorified hobby. So I had to reinvent again. So we managed to keep one employee through all of that. But it was just like our main business became a side hustle. And it's still a side hustle today, a very, very lucrative one. We're still in that business. It's an amazing side hustle. We've been at it over 15 years now. And we're, I think, one of the largest buyers, I don't know, of distressed seconds in the country, but that's to say we're a big fish in the world's smallest pond. But it was during that time where I was like, all right, what am I going to do? So now I'm starting my own personal hard money lending company. I'm flipping houses. I'm doing real estate things to make money, right? We're in real estate. Your listeners know, once you're in that club and you understand it, there's all kinds of ways to make money. So I'm fine. I'm making money go from 0 to 150 grand quickly again. So I'm good. But then I get this email, and I thought I was going to build a hard money lending company, and maybe distressed debt comes back, maybe it doesn't. And we started partnering with a title company at that point. So we're going to build this, real estate empire that's diversified, which is not a terrible idea. But then I get this email, and the email from Scott Myers, who I don't know, but he must have gotten my name at one of the many conferences we spoke at, from the stage, about distressed debt. And so I get this email, and the subject line is real estate without tenants, toilets, and trash. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to open that one. And I open it and I start reading. I'm like, well, all right, that's a little bit of a hot take there, because it's about self-storage, just if you can't tell by now. But and you need tenants. So what does that mean? And sometimes they do leave trash behind. So it's not, look, it got me to open the email, but it wasn't that caught my attention, really. That got me to open it. It was a paragraph in the body of the email that said 80% of all storage facilities are owned by mom and pop owners. And I went, whoa, that's interesting. I never would have, and then I started thinking about it. Really? Because I don't know anything. I know nothing about self-storage. I never saw a self-storage operator at any of the commercial real estate conferences I was at. And, we're there with multifamily, industrial, office, retail. They were all in the 1031 exchange business except for self-storage. I knew nothing about them, never met them. If you would ask me, I don't know what year this is, 2015, 16, something like that. If you would ask me to describe self-storage in that moment before I opened this email, I would have said, I don't know, those places with a lot of orange garage looking doors. I have no idea. I've never rented a unit. I literally know as little about it as you possibly can. So I'm like, wait a second. That is a different perspective for me because this is a business in a commercial real estate asset class. So I started to read further, and then I went to his website, and there was the opportunity to buy, the at-home course. So I bought it. I was like $1,500, but I'm that guy that I'll spend a couple grand or less to learn something and see where it goes. So I did that, and I kept reading the whole time. I'm like, this is amazing, but I don't have a ton of capital. With this course, they want me to come fly to Indianapolis, where he's, headquartered, or wherever they move this academy around to come to their academy for a 3-day event. I'm like, I don't know if I'm investing flight, hotel, time into all this. So I'm embarrassed to admit that I wasn't a full convert from the first, at-home course. But then they came to Philadelphia like a year later, and I got a phone call like, hey, we're going to be in Philadelphia for our academy. You've already paid for your ticket with this course. I'm like, well, I'm out of excuses. So it cost me 3 days and 20 minutes of commute time each day. So I went first day. By the way, the reason I was so intrigued by the 80% being mom and pop, and we'll come out if you remember to ask me what that is today, we'll come back to it. But was because the distressed debt, the secondary market of distressed debt, is a mom and pop business, and it is the wild, wild west. My partner and I actually helped clean it up a lot, but some of the guys we bought from were just absolute fraudsters, and like each one of them has multiple lawsuits against them. We sued one of them at one point, but the point is, it was the wild, wild west, and I'm like, 80% mom and pop. It may not, that doesn't dictate, or necessarily dictate fraud, but it sure dictates just dislocated and dislocated market and, very fragmented information as to what values are, right? Because technology hasn't really blessed self-storage yet. It's there with Google, but not everything else. So that's why I was so intrigued by it. That's why I bought the course. So anyway, fast forward to, I go to the academy. I couldn't sleep that night. After the first day, I drove home. I was like, oh my God, I'm going into self-storage. And the next 2-3 days were just incredible. And I asked a million questions. Of course, I was that guy, constant questions. They probably hated me, but I couldn't get enough of it. And because of the backdrop of, oh my God, 80% of it, because I started to research it by then, and I would have thought self-storage was Public, Extra Space, and CubeSmart. And by the way, CubeSmart headquarters are 15 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. So, I'm familiar now. I'm paying attention. A year's gone by, right? 2 years have gone by. I'm paying attention to self-storage. I'm starting to learn a little. And, I'm like, wait a second. CubeSmart, Public, Extra Space. I thought that was it. It's not. There's so many other facilities. So it was just beyond exciting. And, ended up buying their mentorship program, going through it with my partner, Tom. And, I'll say the rest. There's a lot more to the story, but fast forward to this podcast, and in 7 years, we've acquired 20 facilities. We're building a pro storage facility. We got another piece of dirt in the contract to build another pro storage facility. I just put my first iOS facility under contract. We own boat and RV storage facilities as part of the 20. We have one that's a valet storage facility for the troops up at Fort Drum up in New York. Like there's, by the way, I now teach and present at the same academy I was a student at. My company now fulfills the education, mentorship, and training program. So it, like full circle, yeah. I'm a product of the system. Mind is blown. It's weird for me to be on stage, and for the first time when I got people sitting in front of me on day one, minute one, because I can vividly still remember what it was like and what they're thinking and feeling, and and I tell them that. I'm like, I'm not that far removed from where you're sitting, and it blows my mind that I've acquired 20 facilities in this time and all the things I'm doing because I was given all the tools through this academy and program to do all that. So, and I always tell people, self-storage is what brought you here, but it's all the adjacents that make it even that much more interesting and exciting. And I know you and I talked about some of them before we kicked off here. So that was a long-winded answer, and I apologize, but it's your fault for asking it.
No, yeah. I mean, my first thought right now is holy shit. What a background. Like, you went from a bar, going through all these things, buying courses, finding the right people to get to where you are today. I'm sure there's a lot of lessons there, just
Tons.
packed with lessons, right? I loved it. So you mentioned Pro Storage. For those who don't know, what is Pro Storage?
Yeah, pro storage is actually a term we coined. I tried to trademark it, but the digital storage guys, the cloud storage guys, already trademarked it. Somebody has that already. So it is what it is. I still think it's a great term to describe the difference, to really to set the difference between self storage and pro storage. If you just think of self storage as a B2C, business to consumer, and pro storage is more B2B, business to business, but there are actually physical differences. Not in management, not for the customer. It's still, storage, monthly contract, that whole thing, but just the physical unit sizes. If you think about a self-storage, the most common unit size is the 10 by 10, the 2-bedroom apartment, if you will, in self-storage is the 10 by 10. That's 10 feet deep, 10 feet wide. That simple math, 100 square feet. But what we don't talk about volume in self-storage at all, I think, because we don't think our customers are smart enough, I guess, as an industry. But we do it by square feet, although I think volume matters. But we won't get into it here, nor do we in pro storage, but this is important. Your ceiling height in most self-storage facilities, like 90+%, is 8 feet. You have a 7.5 foot, in fact, standard build today is 8 foot ceiling, 7.5 foot door, right? So that limits you not only into the volume, the height, but more importantly, and this is the distinct difference, you can't drive a truck into a self-storage unit. A pro storage unit, we are 14 foot ceilings with 12.5 foot doors. You can drive your van, your work van, your truck, box truck, an RV. Any vehicle on the road can drive into a pro storage unit. They're not 10 feet wide. They're 12 to 15 feet wide. They're not 10 feet or 15 feet deep. They're 25 to 40 to 50 feet deep. A typical, the most common unit size in self-storage is 100 square feet. In pro storage, it'll be 750 square feet. The smallest will be 500. The largest, roughly 1,000. At least for what we're building. I'm not saying you can't find, various other sizes out there, although you don't really find pro storage out there in hardly in many places. You find small bay flex, and you're seeing a lot of that. I know that's near and dear to your heart. And you'll find that everywhere, and you're finding more and more of it as that industry grows, and we're moving into it as well, because it's definitely a kissing sister to pro storage. I mean, but you don't really find 1,000 square feet of a mini warehouse box that has no office in it with a month-to-month contract and a set rate, not a triple net. Right, that's very rare, and that's what we're building as we think there's market demand for it, and we found that to be true in Wilmington, North Carolina, where we bought one actually. And there's actually 300,000 square feet of the same product there, and you can't find another market in the country like that. So we know it works, and that's what we're going to introduce, everywhere we can. So we're under contract. We're under development. We did our groundbreaking 2 weeks ago in Greenville, South Carolina. We're building 92,000 square feet there of pro storage. And it's really exciting. And we have our next one we bought the dirt. We closed on it last week outside of Atlantic City in Egg Harbor Township, New Jersey, which is finally something close to me. And yeah, couldn't be more excited. The goal is to build 100 of these things, maybe 300.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's back up really quick. You mentioned you've acquired or have went through 20 facilities and some of the boat and RVs acquired. Yeah. You've acquired. Yeah. And you're also in the process of building, obviously you've bought some land, you're ready some of it's shovel ready, right? So 20 properties that you've acquired, I'm guessing they've already been built, yes?
Yes.
And then now you have 2 that are ground ready.
One's
or
going
shovel
vertical
ready, sorry.
right now. One's going vertical right now. The other one, after 2 years in New Jersey, is near shovel ready.
Gotcha.
Yes.
I gotcha. Okay. I guess what is your preference when it comes to buying something that's already built versus building?
I think it just depends on. Look, it's hard to answer that question. I think 10 years from now, Joe will say building all day long. Joe, as the CEO of the Belrose Group, has to, we have overhead, we got bills, so we kind of need to do both to keep the lights on so that we can build more. That said, we're deal junkies. I don't know. I love talking to sellers and crafting deals, especially when we get into like seller financing and just buying finding that nugget of a deal that's the right size that they want to seller finance, where the seller owner, whatever, has 5 units himself that he's not collecting rent on because he's storing his own shit in there. Where the local church always has 2 to 3 units that they're not paying for. Where there's anywhere from 5 to 20 units that are out of circulation because he just hasn't gotten around to fixing the springs on the doors. Where there's 5 to 20 units where the customers haven't paid in 6 months to 2 years, but don't worry, they're good for it. Where he tells me he's the lowest rate in town and he's 100% full in a market that's undersupplied, 100% full on the available units in a market that's undersupplied, and he's below the market in rate by 20 to 30. Like, that's a holy grail of holy shit, we're going to make a lot of money on this deal, right? That's fun. And they don't have a website, and, they cash and checks are collect, that's fun to take that and to turn it into a turnkey facility that, after 3 days of owning it, you can find the facility on your cell phone, rent a unit on your cell phone, pay for that unit on your cell phone, insure that unit on your cell phone. And those are all revenue generators for us. That's all done automatically. That's fun and cool to take something like that and bring it into the 21st century. But it is also, I've learned, because I've never built anything in my life. In fact, when we were down at the groundbreaking, I was kind of walking around going, this is wild. We've expanded a couple of facilities. That was kind of cool. That of the 20 that we bought, we expanded, by 20,000 feet here and 10,000 there. But I've never built anything. Built log cabins with those Lego logs, whatever the hell they were called as a kid. I built forts in basements with blankets and chairs and pillows and couches. I've never built anything in my life. I've rehabbed houses and flipped houses. I've never built one. It was surreal to be standing there walking around watching like construction crews. I'll say something that's way over your head, but if you've got an audience my age, they'll understand. It was like being on Fraggle Rock, right? Where you got little construction guys everywhere, and they work. I don't mean to sound it this way, like I'm somebody special. I'm not, but like they work for me. They work for us. They're doing something. They're building for us, and that was just wild. It was just wild. It was surreal.
And that's a wrap. If you've made it this far, that means you've listened to the entire episode, so thank you. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening from. And if you've learned something or found it useful, share it with one of your homies. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on IG. My handle is pro_TANH. Reach out, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, or what you want to hear about in the future. I'm here to tailor this to you. Until next time.